guys, it's Brandon.
And this is Sabrina, and welcome to the Someone Called BS podcast, where we discuss navigating marriage, entrepreneurship, and owning our own businesses while also trying to do this thing called life together. Thanks for joining us here and listening to our literal BS.
Oh, you're gonna need to edit that out.
Ugh, come on.
Or trick two. Did their trick two make it run a lot better, but for the cheaper?
Seriously, don't say it like that.
Let's get it.
Yeah, you do suck. Welcome, everyone. Please stop doing that, Brandon. So, we just had to start over recording because I literally got so pissed at him that I had to stop recording for a second. But welcome to our new episode.
I'm still baffled as to why. I'm perplexed.
Well, anyway, so we'll move on from that. So the past few episodes, we've been kind of just going with whatever and winging it, but I figured this time we would come with a little bit of more of an idea of what we wanted to talk about. So today, we just recently posted a post on social media on our business page about Brandon's background and history. And I know in the beginning of this podcast that we started, I think like episode 1 or 2, we kind of dove into a little bit about us and our background and then how we met and how we started the business. But I feel like it was like a 30-minute episode. So we went through all of that pretty quickly. And so we're going to take a step back and tell you guys a little bit about us, starting from like where we grew up and who we are as people and how we became, I guess, how we met, and go from there. So do you want to start with you?
Definitely not. No.
Why?
I don't want to start with me.
Why?
Why would I want to go first? You are the one who prepares, and
well, yeah, I prepared.
So I just show up to these things.
So you want me to start so you can see what I talk about?
Yeah. How am I supposed to know what to talk about?
Okay. Well, you're supposed to talk about you and like your family lot, like your family, like how many sisters do you have? How many brothers do you have? Like, all of that stuff. We got a pretty good response from the Facebook post. And so I think people like to get to know other people on like a deeper level. And I think it's more relatable that way.
It's not my strong suit, to be honest. But
I know. You don't like to be relatable.
I'm just one of one. Like, I don't know. I'm out there. Like, I feel like people might not like me.
Well,
so.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best. You go first. We're going to relate it into the idiotgrams from last week, too.
Enneagrams.
At the end.
Well, if we have time at the end of this episode, but if not, we can do it like a 2-part series or something where we kind of relate it to our Enneagrams. And I don't know how far deep you guys want us to dive into that. I don't know who actually like cares about that kind of stuff. I really think it's interesting, but I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, might not. So, tell us what you think and how much you want to know and learn about like Enneagrams and stuff. But
tell us if you want to see more arguments, because apparently I'm good at like starting those right before we podcast somehow.
Yeah, he's really good.
Every time, right before we podcast, she's so livid at me.
Yeah, he's really good at pissing me off. And people always, I swear to you, I don't know how many people like comment to me on the podcast and how funny they think you are on a regular basis. It's not like I'll get a comment here and there. I literally get a comment like every week about how hilarious you are on the podcast.
Everybody else appreciates it.
And I always tell them, like, I do not, in the moment, I never think that you're funny. Whenever.
No, she doesn't. She just had a mental breakdown and was like, I swear to God.
Don't start with me right
I
now.
will not podcast anymore with you. I'm like, first off, for number 1, this was her idea. Okay? I just went along with it. And that's why I don't prepare. I just wing it every single time.
Well, that's fine. You can wing it, but then you have to do what I say.
Okay. All I did was I said I felt like we had covered this topic before, but I could be wrong. I don't have a very
We
good
did
memory.
not. You're just trying to dodge getting deep and real with our podcast listeners and talking about substance. You just like to talk about your chains and your cologne and your sunglasses.
And McLaren's.
Yeah. Which is all great and fine. I think that's why people listen, because you're entertaining. But at the same time, trying to give a variety. And I
Okay.
feel like we always get really good feedback whenever we post certain things that talk about like who you are as a person or what makes you you. I think it's like inspirational to a lot of people, and you should own that. That like,
No, I do. I own it. Believe me.
yeah. So
I'm straight out of a single wide, folks.
we can start with mine, I guess, and then
Yeah.
hopefully that will keep you guys teased for Brandon's life story.
Why is my life story like this big monumental thing?
I don't know.
It's not-
I feel like, well, a lot of our listeners are probably, well, I would say, I think like 75% of our listeners are men. So I feel like they probably will relate to your story a little bit more than mine. But, you know, it's all relatable, I think. So we'll just, and they're probably more interested in what you have to say than me.
Just a regular human, just like everybody listening. But, yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
So, well,
I'm freaking stoked.
Let's get into mine because I have notes. I've prepared. AJ would be proud.
No, I'm not.
AJ, if you're listening, I have a page full of notes that I've prepared.
No wonder she was throwing a fucking hissy fit. She wrote a dossier on this thing.
I put effort into what I'm doing.
A 12-page essay.
But I think it's like important for people to. I don't know. I always feel like I can relate more to people if I know who they are as people.
Okay.
Regardless of
let's go.
Anything
Let's
else.
see who you are then.
Well, to start, I always have, and I feel like I never really even talked to you that much about this, but I feel like it is. What? Why are you making that face?
What? No, go. Continue, please.
I wish you were.
Don't talk to me about what? We talk to each other about everything.
No, I know, but I feel like we never really like sit down and like have these weird, meaningful conversations anymore because, you know, we've been together for 15 years. So I feel like maybe once upon a time, but it's fun to like refresh and like talk about this kind of stuff. I think it's fun, but I'm also a woman apparently, and I get more emotional.
She is what I would call an emotional roller coaster.
That's not true.
That we just saw. We'll get feedback. Everybody will say they just saw a roller coaster right now.
No, they didn't.
Happy to mad.
No.
I wish y'all could see the snippet where she cut it off. She was so furious.
Maybe I'll include that at the end for you guys. That'll be at the next tease. Y'all can listen to the end to hear where I insert the clip from before we had to stop playing.
Incredible. Okay, let's go. Come on.
Okay. So we're going to go through Life History 101 with Sabrina.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Well, Sabrina's family life history. So I am most proud of my family lineage when it comes to like my grandparents. And I feel like it's something that has like shaped me as a human being and as a person, even though I don't really talk about it very much, like outwardly to many people, including you. I feel like we don't ever really talk about that kind of stuff anymore. But I really have a lot of respect for like my grandparents and where they came from. And I think that has a lot to do with who I am as a person. So I wanted to kind of tell their stories in a very brief way and how I became to be from them.
Okay.
And so my grandpa, I hope this is interesting to you guys. If not, I'm sorry. Please stay tuned for Brandon's story. But my what?
You keep saying that. Please stay tuned for Brandon's story, like as if I was birthed from like a different planet and
Well,
shipped
no, I'm
here.
just saying, like, we
that's-
got, like, you're the face of, like, a successful company that we've started, or, you know, that we've taken over, and
I'm literally just a dude.
I think that you're inspirational to people. I don't know that I'm that inspirational to a lot of people, but
I would beg to differ. You're a woman in today's workforce that is highly successful with a position of power.
not in this home. I'm not
What do you
seen
mean?
or heard.
Oh, BS.
Anyway, let me get back to my story. So, anyway, my grandparents are very, very important to me. And I honestly wish there was a lot of things that got in the way of my relationship with them as I got a little bit older in life. But whenever I was very young, like elementary school aged and younger, they were very influential in my life, and I have a lot of my core memories are with them for different reasons that we'll get into. But my grandpa was born on June 1st of 1939. And if you're a history buff, you know that that was like right when World War II, I think, started officially. But obviously there was like turmoil leading up to World War II, right? So there was a lot of stuff happening. There's like the Germans being fucking crazy with like the Holocaust and all of that. I'm not a super big history buff, so I might get like some of my dates wrong. I just know like my grandpa's story. And so his mom, which is my great grandmother, was Austrian. So she grew up in Austria. Do you know where Austria is?
Yeah, that's where the Red Bull rink is.
Yes. But before you learned about Red Bull, did you know where it was? Do you know where
No.
it is? Okay. So I didn't either. That's
But
why.
I know they have good food there.
Brandon's notorious for like getting geography really, really wrong. I don't know how many times he's said some whack ass shit. Like he thought New York wasn't a state for a minute. It was wild. Anyway, so Austria, if you don't know, is like east. It's exactly almost east of France. So it's very close to France. It's like centralized Europe area. And so my great grandmother grew up Austrian. Obviously, she lived there. Her family was there. They were Jewish. Well, she became pregnant with my grandfather, and, you know, all of this turmoil was happening with the war and with the Germans, and the, you know, Jewish religion was being attacked, and Jews were being like ostracized and all of that. So when it became really bad, she was already pregnant with my grandfather, and so she ended up immigrating to France at the time to escape a lot of stuff that was happening to her family and to the Jews in Austria. And so she ended up having my grandfather in Paris, France. And from there, she wanted to escape to go I think her intention was to like immigrate to the United States. But at the time, the United States wasn't accepting immigrants or refugees from the Holocaust. Are you going to say something?
Ellis Island.
Well, yes, but they were also accepting, like, boats were trying. Long story short, my great grandmother went from Paris, France, after she had my grandfather, to Portugal, to where she got on a boat with refugees, like Jewish refugees. They tried to immigrate to the United States. Well, a lot of boats were trying to immigrate to the United States and Canada at the time to like seek shelter and, you know, safety. So at the same time that her boat, the boat that she got on, was headed for Mexico because Mexico was taking immigrants. But that same year, and I don't know like how close in time period, but there was a boat, you can even look it up in history, like on history pages and stuff. Boats were seeking refuge in Miami, and there was like a boat that came to Miami that was turned away, and they had to go back. And so nobody really knows what happened to those people, but obviously most of them probably died. And so she ended up making it with my grandfather as like a baby to Mexico. And so Mexico is where he was raised.
Which side of Mexico?
Mexico City is where they ended up living. So I guess central Mexico.
Yep.
And so he was raised Catholic because she was so traumatized by everything surrounding like the Jewish religion at the time that she didn't want to be known as a Jew. And so she ended up baptizing him Catholic and raising him Catholic to kind of like wash away the Jewish religion. And so she unfortunately had to leave behind like her entire life and her family. And I don't even know what happened to everyone else. But she saved my grandpa and they moved to Mexico City. She had to learn Spanish. She had to learn English. She already knew French and German, so she knew 4 languages. She also taught my grandfather like all 4 of those languages. And so my grandfather grew up Catholic, eventually went to medical school in Mexico, became a psychiatrist, and ended up moving from Mexico to New York to practice medicine when he graduated medical school. And that's where he met my grandma. Well, my grandmother was born on May 31st of 1939. So they were one day apart in the same year they were born, but completely different countries. So my grandmother was born in Finland, and I don't know at what age exactly, but I know as a very, very young child, her mother and her father ended up dying. And so she became an orphan. So she lived at an orphanage in Finland, in a very perverse orphanage. Like they didn't have a lot of money. I remember she would tell me stories of like, she remembered her and her like orphan, I guess, mates. I don't know what you would call your orphan siblings or like, the children that lived at the orphanage with her. They would have to go out and eat tree bark off of trees because at the time, remember, like the world is in chaos. Like World War II is about to start. All this crazy shit is happening. Or actually, World War II has started by the time she's an orphan. And so she told me stories of like them searching for food as little orphans. Eventually, she gets adopted by a family who brings her to America. And she immigrated directly to New York City. So she went to New York. I'm not sure what school or where she went to nursing school, but she ended up going to nursing school. After she was an adult, she cut off relations with her adoptive family because they were apparently very abusive. And so that kind of didn't really work the way that she had hoped. But she graduated nursing school, became a nurse at the same hospital that my grandpa started his career at as a psychiatrist. And so that's where they met. And so then eventually they moved back to Mexico City to be with my grandfather's mother, so my great grandmother, who was still in Mexico City. And she was also obviously very traumatized and affected by the war and everything that she had been through. And so she ended up committing suicide, and my grandfather found her. And so after she committed suicide, I think that was before they ever had any kids, but I think they were already married when he found her. And so after that I think that gave them kind of like they felt like they could leave Mexico City at that point. And so they moved, I believe, to Canada first, and then they moved to America. And so they landed in San Antonio, Texas. And so long story short, the reason that I bring that up is like, I feel like a lot of, I don't know, do you know like generational trauma? Have you ever heard of that?
No. To put it short, no, never heard of it.
And I don't like to use like the word trauma because I feel like everyone uses that word nowadays. I feel like it's just a word that people throw out there like, oh, I've had so much trauma in my life, or, blah, blah, blah. But like my grandparents were like the epitome of like what trauma is. Like, can you imagine like finding your mother hanging in the bathroom because she killed herself, or like escaping the war or the Holocaust, or being so hungry that like you're eating tree bark off trees? Like, that's trauma. But generational trauma is like essentially, and I studied psychology in school, so I'm always really fascinated by it, but it doesn't mean like it's trauma that's passed through generations, but it doesn't mean that the next generation is experiencing like that same trauma. It means that the experiences that caused that first generation of trauma turn into different things like mood disorders or addiction, or just different things that can then genetically be passed on. And so when we talk about generational trauma, there's actual studies, and they actually did studies on like Holocaust survivors and the children of Holocaust survivors, and the grandchildren, then the great grandchildren, all down the line. And like they could see a pattern of like this generational trauma of like mood disorders being passed on, addictions, like all these different things that are passed on to generations that then these kids that know nothing about the actual trauma that, their great great grandparents went through, but they still have to deal with it in some form or fashion, whether that's like mood disorders.
Ish. I would say ish.
Well, yeah. I mean, they don't have to deal with the trauma itself, but I mean, like the mood disorder, the addiction, like the depression, like any of that kind of stuff can be passed on genetically. And so, yeah, there's real studies and evidence that support it. But
That's interesting.
yeah. Well, if you think about it, like that's why they say that there is a genetic factor when it comes to like if your parents were addicts, you're more likely, you have more of a likelihood to also become an addict because there's a genetic factor involved in that. If your mom is depressed, you're more likely to carry the likelihood that you might also become depressed. Like there's genetic. You didn't know that?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, so it's a real thing.
I'm like Joe Rogan. Like, fear is not a factor for me. Like, I feel like if you just, like, if mentally, if you are sound, I feel like it doesn't matter. But that is interesting.
I find that interesting that you say that because I feel like you've dealt with mental health issues.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure. But I, like, you beat them. I
Well,
feel like
yeah.
I feel like I have dealt with the same thing that any man has ever dealt with. It's just whether they actually want to step up and say they've dealt with it.
Yeah.
I think anything that I've ever faced, most men have felt,
Yeah.
and they're just not, too proud or whatever to say like, "Hey, I'm struggling,"
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an important topic.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But yeah, so anyway, sorry to get sidetracked. Essentially, I bring them up because like that generational trauma, I see where that can be a factor, especially when I relate it to like how my dad was growing up, or like what my family looked like.
So that's why you're in an emotional roller coaster.
Maybe.
That makes sense now. Full circle.
Yeah, full circle.
I get it.
We can stop the podcast here at this point. We've found out what's wrong with me.
Yep. Diagnosed.
But yeah, so essentially then my dad, before they left Mexico City, my dad was actually born in Mexico City. I don't remember if I have an aunt and an uncle as well, but I don't know where they were born. But yeah, so then my dad was born. He was the first one, the oldest son. He was definitely like a rebel. He was like the outcast out of the three of them. Like he liked to smoke weed. He was like very skaterish. He did run track, surprisingly. So I didn't inherit any athleticism genes, but yeah, so then my dad ended up going to culinary school, and not really following in my grandfather's footsteps of like in the kind of psychiatry medical realm, but like both of my aunt and my uncle did. So my dad was kind of the outcast. Like he wanted to do cooking and like artsy stuff. And so he did that and he graduated culinary school. And then he met my mom at a restaurant that she worked at as a waitress, and he worked in the kitchen. Like I think it was like one of his first real jobs out of culinary school where he met my mom. She was a single mom. She had my brother when she was 14. She grew up in San Antonio, like very poor Mexican family, kind of, I think everything that you would think that would entail. What?
That was very racist.
Well, I'm just saying.
I apologize, people. That was
No, I'm
very
just saying.
racist.
It's like a traditional poor San Antonian family, like growing up in the inner city of San Antonio. Like there's lots to be kind of assumed by that. It's part of who I am. I'm not bashing it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying I never really knew her family that well. Growing up, she kind of did not have a relationship with them. I know I have a lot of cousins and I'm sure a lot of family on that side, but I don't know them. And yeah, her childhood was, I'm sure, very traumatic for a lot of reasons, but one being that her family married her off when she was 13 to this man who then got her pregnant with I guess he's technically my half brother, but I've never really thought of him like that. He's just always been my brother. And then that man ended up leaving her when she was 14 because he did not want to be responsible for a child. And so then she kind of had to grow up and figure things out by herself. And
I've heard that one before.
And then what do you mean?
I've heard that.
Oh, okay.
You know, the whole I don't really want responsibility of children.
Yep, that's your life story. We'll get to that
Heard
one.
that one.
So, yeah, then my mom, a few years later, I think when my brother was like 4-ish, met my dad. And then like 4 more years later, they ended up having me. And yeah, that was basically their kind of, I don't know, their meeting. And then I know growing up, my brother had a lot of problems because like he didn't know who his dad was, despite like my dad kind of taking over that father role. I don't think and I mean, you can probably speak to this more than I can because I know exactly where I came from. I feel like if you don't know where you come from, even if you have like a father figure in your life, it can be very hard just to navigate life in general. I feel like you're always kind of, well, from my brother's perspective and like seeing, like I felt like he always wondered and he was always like missing this kind of puzzle piece to who he was. And so that was really hard for him. And I remember like he had a lot of anger issues and we'd have to go to therapy together and like do family counseling. It was like this whole thing. And him and my dad kind of butted heads. I think my dad did the best he could, like obviously like learning how to love a child that isn't yours and accepting him. And it was just a hard relationship to navigate. But then my dad, in the early 2000s, I was probably like 7 or 8 at the time, had a back injury. He was working as like a head chef at a very expensive resort in Bernie. And he sustained a back injury at work. And after that, I think the opioid crisis was going on at that point. Like if you have ever watched the movie Dope Sick, it's basically what happened to my dad is he was prescribed opioids for pain that then started an addiction because doctors weren't told the truth on like how addictive opioid medication was. And so he became addicted to opioids for a long time. And he still struggles with addiction, but it got really bad. And then not caused directly by my dad's issue, my mom started drinking heavily. I don't remember at what age, because I feel like from as far as I could remember, that's like what she did. She just was always kind of drinking. And I think like my first memories of her are like me cleaning up after her, like from her drinking episodes and stuff like that. So I don't really have like very vibrant memories of like my parents in particular. And I don't say that in like a hurtful way, but I say that because like that's why I really value my grandparents and like their story, because I used to spend a lot of time with them when I was little, and they had a major impact on like my life and how I thought of things, because I didn't really necessarily have that with my parents. My parents were always kind of too busy with their own problems to like deal with me. And so I grew up with that. And it got real bad. Like, well, I don't know if it got real bad or if I just was more aware of it as I got older, like in high school and stuff. I think maybe I was just more aware of it at that point. Like, I was very aware that my dad would like, they were very hard workers, and they still are very hard workers. Like, they will work and work and work. Like, they both had 2 jobs when I was growing up. Like, there was never a point in my life where I didn't see them work. But when they weren't working, they were busy dealing with their own addictions and their own problems. And so that didn't really leave a whole lot of room for kids, and in particular me, because my brother moved out when he was 16 due to like all the family issues that we had in the house. So when I was 8, he was 16. And so technically I just kind of grew up as like almost an only child in that sense. And I think the age difference, just him and I didn't really like have that real like close bond. And so I was kind of left on my own. I remember like when I met Brandon when I was 16, it was so weird to me because like I would go over to his house and they, despite all their problems, which don't make that face.
Our problems.
Well, I'm saying every family has problems, but like despite their problems, like they still like ate dinner together. And that was like a completely new phenomenon to me. I had never once in my life eaten dinner like that I could remember at a table with like my family, like as a setting. So I remember when I went to his house and I was like ready, and his mom had made us dinner for the first time, and I'm like sitting there with my plate, like waiting to go to our room, because that's usually what I did. I would literally take my dinner, either make it myself or my mom would like make something, but she'd serve it, and then I would go to my room, and like I wouldn't have dinner with anyone ever. I just ate alone. And so I just thought that was normal. And then I went to Brandon's family and like they were having dinner together, and it was the most uncomfortable situation I had experienced in my life that far, because it was just so weird to me. And it sounds weird to say now because you and I have dinner with each other like every night now, and I can't imagine like having a child or a family and like not sitting at a dinner table and like spending time together.
Yeah, it's kind of like time to regroup from everyone's day and like get caught up and talk to each other and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I mean, we, no matter what was going on, if it was a good day or a bad day, or if my brother and sister were mad at me, or mom was mad at me or whatever, we still sat down and ate with each other. There was never a time where we didn't.
Yeah.
So.
And after a while I got used to it, but at first I just remember being like shell shocked, and like I had never experienced that before. So, yeah, I think as a kid, I grew up with like, and it's only like now that I'm even starting to understand and like heal from all of the stuff that happened to me. And I by no means had like the worst childhood of all time. Like I at least like I never experienced hunger to the point where like I was starving, or, I never experienced physical abuse, like nothing like that. So to me, like I made it out okay, and I didn't have a terrible childhood. I just had parents that struggled with their own demons and their own problems, that did the best that they could with what they could give me at the time. And luckily I had these amazing grandparents that were a vital part of like my childhood, and I also had an aunt that was very vital to like who I am. But I think I'm just now kind of understanding and healing from all of that, and realizing that like I I was always sacrificing like my own feelings and my own wants and my own needs for the needs of other people. And I even did that, like I've done that in friendships, I've done that in our marriage, like I've done that regardless. And I don't say that as like a negative. I'm just saying I'm very, very aware of my boundaries now and who I am as a person and why I act the way that I do. And so when I get in situations where I'm like, you know what, maybe I'm like sacrificing my own mental health or my own boundaries or my own peace for someone else because I want to prove to them that I'm worthy, instead of just knowing that I am, and like having, the confidence in what I bring to the table, instead of just always trying to prove to myself like and prove to other people that I'm worthy of love, or worthy of a relationship, or worthy of whatever it is. And so I say that because I'm about to be 31, and I'm just now realizing those things after turning 30. And I think that it takes a lot of like resilience and strength and understanding and being introspective on like who you are and why you act this a certain way, or why I wanted to make my life different, or why I, wanted to become a business owner and kind of control my outcome on my life and like what it means for me. And I think all of that just makes you who you are. So that's my story, my background. I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, and I think I would have
That's true.
applied myself a little bit more had I had I don't know,
Financial backing.
well, I could have gotten loans for that. Like I think
We got some loans on a particular
I think
diploma that's not being utilized right now.
I think what was also vital is the fact that last year I was officially diagnosed with ADHD. And that's helped me understand why I am the way I am too, because at first the psychiatrist that gave me all the tests, at first he didn't think that I had ADHD because we started with a questionnaire. So it starts with like a little ADHD questionnaire on different things, but like a lot of the questions have to do with, were you bad at school? Like, did you have trouble in school? Did you have bad grades? Did you have behavioral issues? And most of my answers to those questions were no. Like, even in middle school and high school, like, I didn't really put in effort, I think because of the lack of support I had at home, and like probably because of my ADHD, like I never put in effort. Like I felt too overwhelmed and like too tired and exhausted, and like just I don't know what it was, but I never really put in effort to do things and to study and to excel at projects and all of that. But I was luckily just good at school. Like I could take a test and pass it and like barely study for it. I was just good at school. I was like an average B student without trying. And so I think if I had actually applied myself, or maybe gotten a diagnosis sooner on like my ADHD, or, maybe my home life was different. Like I could have done a lot of different things, but I also feel like everything works out for a reason. Had I gone to vet school, I don't, we obviously wouldn't be where we're at right now. Our life would look totally different. I would, also be in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, I'm sure. And so things always work out for a reason. But yeah, I officially got diagnosed with ADHD last year. I got off all my antidepressants, my anti-anxiety pills. Like I don't take any of that anymore. Not that it really helped me, because I struggled a lot with like my
attitude, mainly.
well, I think in my 20s, I was just learning how to be a person. Like, just, I didn't really have a whole lot of support growing up. And like, I wasn't really taught much about being
Trying
an
to find
adult.
her identity.
And so, yeah, I just thought that, well, my parents are like dealing with this stuff, and maybe like I'm depressed, and maybe I have anxiety, and maybe I need medicine for that. Like I don't know, I'm just grasping at straws to like help myself and help fix me. And then I would try some meds, and then like they wouldn't really make a difference, but then I didn't really have any side effects, so I was like, okay, well I guess I'll just stay on this and see what it does for me. And then when I got off of them, I never noticed a difference. Like I weaned off of them because you don't want to stop cold turkey. But even while I was weaning off of them, I never felt like, oh my gosh, I need to go back on them. Like I feel crazy. Like I never felt that way. And then when I was officially diagnosed, and I did like, I forget what other ADHD tests, what they're called, but I did like the plot graph. I don't remember what it's called, but the official test. And then I got on my ADHD medicine, which is Adderall. It's like life changing for people that actually need it. Like it's just so bizarre to me to see the difference that I have in like my.
Popping addies.
No, I don't pop addies.
She pops addies.
No, I take them as
Addies and Xannies
No,
as needed.
I don't.
Xan bars.
I only have a minor prescription for Xanax when I get too crazy. But other than that, that's all that I take.
Well, you should have taken one a while ago because you were wilding out.
I probably will later tonight. I'll take one just to relax for that evening because you're driving me insane. But yeah, so that's my background and a little bit about me. And
yeah, that was a whole therapy session right there.
I mean,
that was a whole in-depth therapy session.
Are you
with
ready?
Sabrina Brown.
Are you ready for yours?
I don't even have a bunch of time for number one.
Well, we can always make this a two-parter, but I feel like
for number two,
I feel like the audience will keep listening.
I don't have near that type of information.
Well, no, but you have lots to talk about.
Do I?
Yeah.
I don't have the whole layout from my great grandfather.
No, the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I resonate with that, and I feel like it's a huge part of who I am. Like it's molded me as a person. Like, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to like my parents, but I don't derive my value or like who I am as a person, obviously from anyone, but I see my grandparents as like this proud kind of thing in my life because they were immigrants that like made something from nothing.
Yeah, okay.
And so like they're very important to me, but like you had your pawpaw that was very important to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I just wanted to talk about very influential people in my life that helped shape me for who I am.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
So where do you want to start?
I guess I should have prepared. I don't have that whole dossier.
I knew if I told you in advance, you wouldn't have prepared anyway, so let's just wing it.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'll try to do the best I can here with this little bit of time. Don't want to make these too long, but Essentially, let's see. I guess we'll start from the beginning. The best that I can.
Okay.
How would I start from the beginning?
Well, you were born in Fredericksburg.
Yeah, I was born in Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg, Texas, to be exact. I was born in 1990. There was no world wars going on at that time. I'm not starting my story off with any world wars, not smuggling to get into the country, nothing like that.
You were just a good white boy from Texas.
Yep. Let's see.
Well, so you didn't know your dad, right?
Well, yeah, but that didn't really happen until like later on. So
Okay.
basically, I was born and, had a
Really?
yeah, had a childhood.
Yeah.
Did the things that baby children do.
Uh-huh.
Um I my mom was pretty firm on me like in school.
Hmm.
She definitely expected me to be a straight A student, which I was up until I think the 7th grade, maybe. I I can't really remember. 6th or 7th grade is where I kind of fell off and just I couldn't do it anymore. Like I couldn't keep up with straight A's.
I'm sorry, guys. Our dogs are like,
What are they
Milton,
barking at?
stop.
Hey, will you shut your little trap?
Stop, Milton. You're interrupting your dad's story.
There's 2 little gerbils running around here. Angry gerbils. Yeah, so she definitely wanted me to have straight A's and be a good student. I think it was probably because my mom grew up pretty relatively poor. My a majority of my family is from the Comfort area. My papa, my aunts, my uncles, my mom was from that area, born and raised majority of her life there. Um and they didn't, grow up super wealthy. I think they lived a pretty modest life, pretty poor. My mom worked from a young age, that's for sure. And I think she wanted more for me, so she wanted me to excel in school. So, I tried. I just couldn't do it. School has never been a thing for me that I excelled at very well. Um, so after about the 6th grade, 7th grade time frame, I kind of fell off. I was a average student at best, like B's, some C's. Um, Basically, once I started in high school, I got a job when I was my freshman year. There was a guy that down the street had a construction company, and I walked down there one day and asked if I could get a job on the weekends, and he was like, yeah, absolutely, I can use a labor hand. So I worked for him and like laid grass and did landscaping, whatever, drove a bobcat and whatever he would pay me to do. But I could make $300 in a weekend, which for me was pretty good.
Well, back in the day, that was good money too.
Yeah, and once I started making that money, to be honest, I can say this now because I'm out of school. I just kind of checked out essentially. Like, I figured out that a lot of my essays and things like that, back in the day, they didn't have super advanced, like now I think they have these things you can run the essays through or whatever, or they can,
AI.
yeah, they can see if stuff is plagiarized or whatever. But like back in the day, I could buy essays like $50 on the internet. I could pay and have somebody else do the essay. So Like, I'm like, well, shit, I'm making $300 in a weekend. Like, I don't care. So I would pay for essays. If any of my classmates listen to the podcast, they can attest that I copied a lot of homework. I didn't really.
Didn't you sell rocks at one point? Was that earlier?
Oh, early in my childhood. Yeah, when we lived in Virginia for a short stint with my Oma, and I don't know how or why I got into the business, but there was a Dollar Tree up there, and whenever I would go in there, I would make my Oma buy me these little packets of rocks that I assume were for aquariums. And, they're $1. So, of course, they would buy me these because we didn't grow up wealthy by any means. And, but I could buy these rocks. Well, when I was going to school in Virginia, I made a nice little side gig of selling these rocks. So I would get a whole bag for $1, and then I would sell like these little stones and rocks. I'd be like,
what were
oh,
you telling people to sell these rocks?
I don't remember. My memory is so like horrible, but I just remember I would sell like a little Ziploc baggie of 3 or 4 aquarium rocks for $1. And
How old were you? You were like elementary school?
oh God,
You had to be like elementary school, right? Because
I would have to research it, but yeah, I mean, I was pretty young, maybe third grade or something like that.
you already had the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I don't remember that too much of my childhood. I know I went to school in Rockport. I was a Rockport pirate at one time because we used to live in Rockport in a house on stilts. And then we lived in Virginia for a very short stint. I think Richmond, Virginia,
Where you had your rock hustle.
where I had my rock hustle. That's where I had that going. And then moved to Lavernia.
Yeah. And then you were you had a very ethnic background at one point, right? Like you liked the spinner shoes and like the
Oh, that's racist.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so
He was like Eminem.
during my junior high years,
I've seen pictures.
I was a pretty angry youth. I had a multitude of reasons for my anger, but yeah, I really related to like music. Hip hop was a big thing. One of my best friends at the time, Corey Fuller, we would, rap to Nelly. I had a backpack back in those days with some speakers in it, and you could put your CD player in there and connect it to the speakers. So, yeah, that's how I rolled back then.
Yeah.
And then one day I got one of the teachers overheard some Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Mm.
We were having a little rap sesh before school, and I got myself promptly written up for that, and my mother was livid. So she freaked right the fuck on out and took all of my CDs that I had onto the porch and took a hammer and shattered all my CDs, made me watch. So that was super fun. But, I told her, like, okay, cool. Well, I fucking make $300 a week. So I just would go to Hastings and buy the CDs all over again. Like, I don't care. Can't stop me. But, yeah, so I got in trouble for that. But, yeah, I did go through a phase where I was wearing like Jinko jeans and Echo t-shirts. But like we were super poor, so I had to get my jeans and t-shirts at the flea market, like Highway 16. I had to get the knockoff ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made the most of what I had. I did have some Dada Spreewell spinners when I was in high
I
school.
thought you were gonna say Dada issues.
No, I did have those. So I don't remember exactly when it was.
Dadas were shoes, by the way. I didn't know what those were.
Yeah, Dada Supremes, the Spreewell spinners.
They were spinner shoes.
Me and Corey both had a pair.
Yeah.
But that was in high school. I was pretty dope in high school because I had a lot of bread. So I'll never forget it. I got invited to this big bonfire party, and it was like a seniors only party, but I was one of the cooler underclassmen. So it was like probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 of us underclassmen that got invited. And they were like, all right, we'll let you in, but you're going to have to kick for the beer money. And I was like, oh, all right. Like, I didn't know how much beer was. Um, so I was like, oh, here's like $100. And I remember they were freaking out. They were like, dude, $100?
Back in
I was
the
like,
day, that was a lot of money
oh,
too.
is that like not enough or what? And they were like, no, dude, $100? We're getting fucking kegs. What do you want? Like, I'm like, oh shit. All right, yeah, cool, whatever. Um, but yeah. So what was I saying?
I don't know.
Yeah,
You were just going,
yeah.
talking.
I don't remember what point I was trying to make of
You
that.
circle track raced.
Yeah. So, oh, I don't remember what grade it was, but I always kind of had this, like, like this odd feeling that my dad, who raised me, Harley, was not my real dad. I always had this kind of like inkling, this feeling. We were never super, super close, never super connected. And maybe it was because I wasn't his actual kid. So he didn't like have that connection to
Yeah,
me.
I think it's hard to.
Perhaps.
I think it's hard to like cultivate because I
I
saw
really don't
that.
know.
Yeah.
We just were never super close. And I always kind of felt like something was a little bit off there. So, my papa was a real inspiration in my life. Um, just all around badass, just all around. Absolutely, there is nobody I think you can ask in the world that knew TD Brown that didn't love him. I don't think there's anybody who disliked that man,
Yeah.
except maybe his ex-wife, perhaps. Other than that, I think everybody liked him. He was very, very well liked and well loved. Closest thing I would say I had to a father figure growing up, just because, like I said, my real dad, or as I call him, my fake dad, we just never really connected. Like, I think in the early years, from what I can remember of my childhood, forgive me, guys, I don't have a dossier like she does. I just don't have very many memories
Yeah.
that I can pull out of a hat. I think he did the best he could, but I think the connectivity just wasn't there for whatever reasons. I think some of them were definitely his personal reasons because from what I understand, like he had a rough past with his dad, so maybe he didn't really know how to be a dad and ultimately, as we found out, did not want to be one. But we'll get to that. So yeah, it just was kind of like whatever. So I would relish the summers because every summer I would go to Comfort and spend them with my papa and my uncle Jeff and my uncle Bubba. Um,
And
and
that's on your mom's side.
that's on my mom's
Yeah.
side. And we would just do all sorts of cool shit. Like that's what got me into working on cars. They always tinker with stuff, work on cars. My uncle Jeff, he used to own his own shop as well. They just got me into it, and they're wizards with vehicles. So still to this day, honestly. But yeah, I think that's probably how I initially got the itch. They always drove really cool stuff. My papa had the coolest trucks whenever I was growing up. And yeah, he's the one who ended up tipping me off one summer. I can't remember the timeline. Sorry, guys. But he ended up telling me like, "Hey, yeah, your dad isn't really your dad. Um, yeah,
Well,
I think I was 14 or 15 maybe at this time."
And that was like the first time.
13 maybe.
That was the first time you ever like heard it out loud.
That was the first time I heard it out loud, so it was quite a shock to me. Even though I kind of like knew in my gut, like, oh, okay, something's just off here about this relationship.
Yeah.
So then when I went home, I asked my mom about it, and she got mad, and she was mad at my papa for quite some time. And there was this whole thing where like it was just a big deal. But yeah, she ended up telling me that my fake dad wasn't my real dad, and that my real dad had a heart attack, which, as I found out later on in life, wasn't the case either. But I guess that's what she was told at the time.
So he had had a heart attack and died. He was
Yeah.
no longer living.
He was no longer living, because I was wanting to know, like, oh, who was he? What,
Yeah.
why wasn't he ever around? Did he know about me? This, that, and the third. Although at that time I was pretty angry about it. I didn't really control my emotions very well. Kind of lost my shit and was like, well, part of me was mad at my mom for not telling me sooner. Like, I feel like I deserved to know that sooner.
Yeah. Well, and not to place blame at all, but I feel like that would be really, really hard to just find out like all of a sudden. Like when I look at that compared to like, because I always like think of my brother in these instances, because he had always known, it just had always been a known fact that like my dad wasn't his real dad, but he always knew that, so it was never like a surprise.
Yeah.
But, like I feel that would be really hard. Of course you were angry, like that would be really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure my mom had her reasons, I
Yeah.
guess. I mean, I didn't really understand no more care at the time. I was a teenage boy who had hormones and was fucking angry about it. I was angry at her for not telling me. I thought that was bullshit. I was angry at my fake dad because that even kind of like was like, oh, okay, well, no wonder why you don't love me. You don't care about me.
Yeah.
And then I was obviously angry at my biological father because I'm like, why the fuck weren't you around? Like, why weren't you ever there for me?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? That's pretty much where I left it, honestly, at that time, because I wasn't mature enough to process it. And I was very angry about that, and I left it until I don't know how many years down the line until you brought it up.
Yeah.
But essentially, yeah, from there I just put it behind me. I was like, well, fuck it, right? Like, no, my emotions are not going to change the outcome. It doesn't matter if I'm mad or if I'm angry. Like, it's not going to change anything. He's dead now, right? So
Yeah.
it's, like, whatever. So I did the best I could mitigating through that. I played as much sports as I could in high school. Got me out of the house, got me hanging out with my friends and socializing, and helped take my mind off of stuff like that. Gave me an outlet for anger, like football, things like that. I was a pretty angry teenage kid.
That's a lot to deal with as a teenage kid.
Yeah, for sure. It was tough. Probably could have handled it better, but like I said, we were, we lived in a single wide. We were not by any means wealthy. We always drove my family didn't drive new vehicles. I didn't even know that was a thing. Whenever we used to ride around and go places, I would always see people with houses and like multiple vehicles, and I'm like, how the fuck are these people doing that?
Yeah.
Because my mom would work her ass off. Like, she did tax preparation and taxes, and I think that's where a lot of my work ethic comes from, because she would just work like crazy
Yeah.
to make sure we had the best that she could provide for us, the absolute best. And I attribute my work ethic between her and my papa and my uncles. They work their asses off to this day. My papa, up until the day he died, literally, he would never sit down. That man was up at 5 a.m. every single morning. He would work from 5 a.m. till about 11, have a little sandwich and watch Bonanza, take a little power nap for about an hour and a half, and then he would go have coffee with my Aunt Frances, coffee and cookies, and then some more work until it was time to make dinner, and then he was making dinner. And then after that, that's when my uncles would get home, and guess what? More work until 8, 9 p.m. So I think that's where I've picked up my work ethic from.
Yeah.
It's definitely from my mom and Papa, my Uncle Jeff, Uncle Bubba. So shout out to you guys for instilling that into me because I very much appreciate it now. Let's see. What else do I have? What else? Where else? Where am I at?
Well, you're in high school.
Yeah. So I'm in high school. I kind of already knew at that time what I wanted to do. We were circle track racing at the time. My fake dad, he had like a little band going on. He was a singer. So he really liked to, they would go and do these shows at bars and whatnot, like all around town. Like if you've ever heard of the Shady Lady in San Antonio, it is not a place I would set foot into, but they did that for many, many years. It's always been his big thing. Claim to fame, if you will.
And so while they did that, you were racing? Is that what you mean? Or
Well, no, I mean, my mom was always at the races, uh, with me, but like he kind of had his thing, and like my mom and me and my sister, we kind of had our thing,
Yeah.
and like it was just this kind of weird dynamic. But yeah, we circle track raced my senior year. Coming into my senior year, my mom actually got really, really sick one night, and we had to take her into the ER, and her blood cell count was tanked. And like I said, we were super poor. We didn't have insurance. Like we never went to the doctor for normal checkups like we were supposed to. And my mom is a super stubborn lady, which is probably why she beat leukemia. But she hates the doctor, and she would never, never go. Which I mean, I get that from her too because I hate going to the doctor. But she ended up going because she passed out, and yeah, she had leukemia. It was again not the best with memory, but it was like the acute. I forget what the actual name is called, acute something leukemia, but it's the most aggressive kind. So basically, from one night we just thought like, oh man, mom's not feeling good, she's sick, to the next thing we know, they're like rushing her downtown. Basically within that same week, they pretty much told us, the doctors pretty much told us like, hey, just so you know, like, yeah, your mom's probably not gonna make it. So you should, I distinctly remember the doctors coming out, sitting down with my sister, my brother, me, saying like, hey, you might want to figure out what to tell your mom because she's not gonna make it. Like, this is bad. So that was really, really hard, and I remember them telling her too, like, hey, just so you know, you're probably not gonna pull through this, because she was a smoker. My papa was too, like up until the day he died. Like that was the Marlboro man. He had the Marlboro silk jacket, the ashtrays, the Zippo, you name it, he had it. So my mom was a smoker as well, and they were like, yeah, your age, and then you're a smoker. This form of leukemia is very aggressive. Like, the odds are just not there for you. So you should probably start figuring out, write a will, So my mom, she was basically like preparing to die. She actually, I remember it was super sad. She went through a stage where she was hospitalized my whole senior year. So I didn't really have a normal senior year, because how could I, right? I was concerned every single day, like, oh my God, my mom's gonna freaking die. And my fake dad at the time was at the hospital quite a bit. So that left me to watch over my brother and sister. So, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be the dad of the house while, fake dad's at the hospital and mom is sick. I'm going to make sure these guys do their homework and do this and do that. And I think they absolutely hated me for it. I didn't know what to do. I was trying to be a dad and I had no idea how to be a dad, because I didn't really have a dad per se, because we never really had that connection. So, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. So, and I was still an angry teenager. So I would yell at my sister. She would yell back at me. My brother is a very, what's the word for that?
Sensitive, emotional.
Like, he's the peace bearer. Like, me and my sister are pretty quick. We've got
He's
pretty short fuses, and he's like, guys,
he's the little peacemaker.
give peace a chance.
Yeah.
And we're both like, get the fuck out of here.
He's definitely like more sensitive, more emotional, but like in a good, like he just wants peace.
Yeah.
Like with everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, my senior year was tough, man.
Well, yeah, you had to step into being an adult, and then
yeah,
I think and then your siblings couldn't deal with that either, but you had to be like that support for your siblings who are younger and don't know what.
Yeah, I was
what's
trying
going
to.
on.
I was trying to fake a front, like, hey, everything's gonna be all right. Mom's gonna pull through this. She's gonna be okay. But in reality, I had no fucking idea, man. Every day it was like bad news. What we would get feedback on from the doctor or from Harley when he would come home, and then now looking back on it, it's like, who even knows if he was actually at the hospital? Now that he's not really around and not in our lives, like, kind of pisses me off, because I'm almost certain, like, some nights when he said he was at the hospital with my mom, he probably wasn't. He was probably out fucking around. Obviously, something like that puts a whole strain on the family, right? Like, it was tough on my mom because she's isolated there in the hospital. I remember her telling me years down the road she felt like we didn't care because we never came to visit her, which we visited as much as we could, but
Also,
obviously, like, we were trying to do school and hold down the house and do these things, and
I mean, y'all were kids.
yeah, so we went as much as we could, or as much as Harley would take us up there.
But it's also scary for kids to like go to a hospital and
I hate hospitals to this day because of
like
that.
see someone that you love so much dying. Like that's scary for adults, so let alone like 3 kids that are going to see their mom and they think she's going to die. Like I don't think that's a situation that kids are prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was super, super tough, and then super tough for my mom, super tough for Harley too. I'm sure it wasn't easy, although I don't condone the way he handled things. Don't think he went the best way about it, but it is what it is. Ultimately, my mom beat leukemia, came out, kicked its ass, beat it, did chemo after she was released from the hospital, went into remission. So I, at that point, felt like it was okay. to go off to school. So I went off to the Universal Technical Institute. Like, I already knew I was going to work on cars. That's in some form or fashion. So at the time, my best friend was Jason Stanley. We met each other through racing, and we decided like we were going to go to the Universal Technical Institute together and do the program. And then from there, we were going to move to North Carolina and go to NTI, the NASCAR Technical Institute. Was it North Carolina, South Carolina? One of the Carolinas. I'm bad with geography, as you mentioned. But one of the Carolinas, NTI is up there, and we were going to transfer and go do that. UTI is a year-long process, or at least the course that I took, it was a little bit over a year long. I think it was 13 and a half months. So I went there. I did that. Kicked its ass. I was very, very good at that. At that school, I was absolutely perfect.
Because I think you were passionate about it.
Because I honestly already had quite a bit of know-how because of my uncles and my pawpaw. So yeah, I did really, really good on that because it's 50% book work and 50% hands-on, and I'm a hands-on type person. So I really excelled there. I enjoyed it. I had fun. Kind of sucked. I remember I was in like my third course because they're in 3-week courses. I think I was in my second or third course. They called me into like the student admissions office, and they're like, "All right, Mr. Brown, well, we just wanted to let you know that this is as far as your parents' funding is going to get you." And I was like, "What?" They were like, "Yeah, so like this is all they got approved for. Like they can't get approved for any more." So that was kind of a shock to me. I was like, "So what do I do?" They were like, "Oh, well, if you want to continue school, you're going to have to, sign up and
Pay.
I'm like, "Oh shit. Okay." So I did. Which was at the time like I didn't know. I just didn't know. I knew I wasn't ready to come home and like, quit. So I signed up and got approved, whatever. Super expensive school, but if you ask me, worth every penny if you're going to go there and apply yourself. If not, if you're going to go and fuck around, you absolutely can walk away with like $25,000, $26,000 worth of debt and a piece of paper that you can't do shit with. But if you go and you apply yourself, it's awesome. So I did. I applied the shit out of myself. I worked at the National Tire and Battery Company there in Atascocita where I lived. And I had an apartment there with Jason. And we went to school in the early morning class from 6 a.m. to 12:30. And then we would get out and I would go home, eat lunch, and then go to work. We worked from like the 2:30 shift until close, which was like 2:30 to 8 o'clock. I think it was 8 o'clock. So I would do that. And then on my days off, which were typically during the week because NTB didn't like to give you weekends off, they would give like the more senior guys that have been there for a while the weekends off, and you would get days off during the week. So my days during the week where I had off, if it was a course that I was struggling in or a course that I enjoyed very, very much, I would ask the instructors, "Hey, is it all right? I'd already sat through the morning course." So if it was a day of content that I didn't, context that I didn't particularly understand, I would ask the instructor, "Do you mind if I sit in on the afternoon course as well?" So I could like really hammer in the information and understand it. Or if it was just a day where I really enjoyed it and I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is awesome."
Yeah.
I would sit in an additional course. So, and I met lifelong friends there in Houston. My friend Artemio, he's one of the best friends I have in my entire life.
Yeah.
He still lives right there in Atascocita, and he was the third key at NTB when I worked there.
And he is now a detective.
Well,
right?
I can't speak on too much.
Well, no, but he's very successful in crime and
he's
Yeah.
he's more than a detective now, but I can't really speak on that for legal reasons. But yes,
We're very proud of him.
very, very proud of him, and watching him like grow up and grow his family has been super cool. He's got 2 little baby children now.
Yeah.
My friend Zane, my friend Ricky, like made a lot of lifelong friends there in Houston. So I had family that wasn't family that I call family now, that wasn't blood, that took care of my ass over there, made sure I never missed a meal, stuff like that. So super, super cool part of my life. Then my life got kind of turned upside down literally the day I graduated. UTI.
I was there. This is insert Sabrina into this picture.
So I had met Sabrina. I think those were MySpace times.
Well, yeah, we had like officially friended each other on MySpace,
Yeah.
but we knew each other from the racetrack when Brandon used to circle track race because my boyfriend at the time also dabbled in. He never circle track raced. He just hung around with people that circle track raced. But yeah, that's how we knew each other. And
Wasn't
then, like,
fucking with me or my style.
But while Brandon was in school, that's when we really started talking.
Yeah.
Like he was in Houston and I was in Bernie. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
But
we ended up starting to date while I was in school.
Yeah. So
while I was at UTI.
So by the time on Brandon's graduation day, that was probably maybe like the 3rd or 4th time I had ever seen him in person. That's how new our relationship was. And I was 16 and he was 19. Yeah.
And we rode home together. The day I graduated, I left. And I came back home in my dually Suburban.
Yeah, his dually Suburban.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. But, I was working my ass off. So I did have money. And I got this Suburban from my mom. And me and my uncle and my pawpaw, we pimped that thing out. We put a 3/4 ton dually axle underneath that frame and put fender wells on it. And it was the dually Suburban because I saw one on Twister and I wanted to make one. And so we did.
Rockstar wheels.
Yeah. So when it was in high school, it was actually 2-tone. It was like, 3-tone if you count the fenders. It was like blue. Yeah, it's pretty crazy looking. But right before I went off to school, I was working at Earnhardt and Sons right there on WW White, which they're still there to this day, right across from Big Lou's Pizza. So shout out to Charlie Earnhardt for giving me a shot to work there when I was in high school. We painted that Suburban in his shop. We literally hung like cloth things up and he painted that thing black.
That's cool.
We painted it black.
Yeah, I only ever knew it was black. I didn't know you before, but
yeah, it was black. Had a hood scoop on it. I had Rockstars, Murdered Out Tent. Thing was sick as fuck. I actually still have it. It's at my uncle's.
We should bring it back.
I very much would love to one day, when I'm actually rich for real, swap it onto a 3500 LBZ frame and have like a Duramax Allison combo underneath it. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But I got too many projects right now, but that one will eventually come around.
So yeah,
we rode home.
We rode home.
I graduated, with honors, fucking top flight of my class.
And mind you, are we gonna go into the story of like when you get home and you like find out all this?
Yeah.
So mind you, I'm like this innocent little child. Like if you think back, like my family's dysfunctional. I'm trying to escape, the dysfunction. I'm like all in love with Brandon. I think he's like this amazing little masterpiece that I've met and like my escape from my own hell. And I'm very new to the family. Like I don't know them very well, but they're obviously all welcoming and nice. And then we arrive home.
So we arrived home and that's when hell broke loose. So literally I park in the driveway And my fake dad, Harley, starts walking towards me. And, like, he's like, well, son, I got to talk to you. I'm like, oh, what's up? Like, I thought, I had just graduated. So, like, it's going to be some,
Man-to-man talk
yeah,
or
like
something.
how proud he was or something like that. Nah. Actually, what he wanted to tell me is that while I was away at school, him and my mom had decided they were going to divorce, and they did not want to tell me. I don't remember how long that was going on, but I think it was like 6 months after I had left. They decided that they were going to get a divorce. Um, and the fucked up part is he couldn't afford to like move away. So my Oma lived across the street from us,
Which is his
in
mom.
another little trailer house because we lived in trailers, which is Harley's mom. And he was like, "Yeah, I live across the street at your Oma's now. So anytime you need me, boy, I'm right across the street." Literally the day I got home from college, that's the bomb he dropped on me. And I'm looking at my sister, my brother, and Sabrina. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? My mom, I'm like, what? And my mom's like, yeah, he's a piece of shit. Sabrina's like, yeah, I knew, but I wasn't supposed to tell you
because apparently when we were driving, I drove with his family to his graduation, like from Livonia to Houston. On the way there, I don't even remember how old his sister was. Like, she's like 3 years younger than me or 2 years younger than me. So,
Yeah.
like, there's a small age gap, but we're talking and she's like, what do you know? And I just remember being like, what is happening? I don't know anything. Like, what is going on? And then that's when they like told me all this stuff, like on the way. But yeah. And so then I'm just standing there, like, I don't know what to do. I'm like,
yeah. She's just like in the middle of this. I'm like fucking yelling in our driveway. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what did you just tell me? Like, how is this possible? So then he like walks across the street. I'm like,
well, and he told you he just didn't want to have the responsibility.
no, that wasn't at that time.
Gotcha. Okay.
So like he just walked across the street and was like, yeah, if you need anything, I'm just right across the street, man. Just give me a buzz, come on over. I'm like, what? So then, my sister,
it's funny now, but it was not funny.
yeah, my sister, she's like breaking down. She's like, yeah, it's fucking, he's been a piece of shit and this and that and the third. And my brother's like, stop, give peace a chance, brother.
Oh,
And
baby Dustin.
yeah, my mom, she was obviously struggling with this, right? Like, obviously, her fucking life is unraveling.
Well,
and on top of that, she was doing chemo and blood transfusions and these things, so she was on a lot of different medications. They had told her she was going to die. She didn't die. So like apparently whenever you get prepared to die and then you don't, like all these things happen with your brain. So she was on so many kinds of medications that she was very emotional, she was moody.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of studies that like the psychological effects of like going through cancer treatments and like thinking that you're gonna die and then not. Like, there's a lot of psychological turmoil that goes on.
And she was very against therapy at that time. So it was bad. Like, it was pretty ugly. I won't go into details, but it was rough. It was rough for everybody.
Yeah.
So I was living at home at that time, as I had just moved back home. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. So I was trying to like, be strong and be the man of the house. And my mom would have these freakouts and episodes because, she's having all of this stress thrown on her, and my dad's just basically walked out, and my sister, she doesn't know how to handle it. My brother is upset about it. So I go over there and I'm like, I'm gonna go fucking talk to this dude. Like, what the fuck is his problem? So I go over there one night and me, my sister, and Dustin, we went over there and we're like, wanted to know why. We're like, why? What what the fuck, man? And he's just like, yeah, me and your mom, we just, lost touch, lost connection, whatever. And we're like, yeah, well, obviously, fuck stick. She was in the hospital dying with leukemia. So, yeah, it's going to be tough to, keep that connection
Keep the
alive.
fire going.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, well, basically, seeing other people now, and me and your mom, we just don't connect, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, honestly, I just don't want the responsibility of having kids. He just looked us right in the face and said that right into the sockets of my fucking soul. I'm 19 years old. He's telling me, yeah, I just don't want the responsibility of kids. And my brother and sister, they're still in school.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
They're still your sister's like 14 at the time. Your
yeah,
brother's like 11, 12. I don't
yeah,
know. They're little kids.
yeah, shit was wild, man.
And so, yeah.
And so, basically, I did the best I could to help my mom. And hopefully, I think, obviously now my sister's grown up. I'm super proud of her. She's got a husband, 2 baby children of her own. My mom lives in Florida with them. To cut like a super long story a little bit shorter. Obviously, I don't like fault my mom for any of that. She was not in her right mind. But those were some rough years for sure. There were some tough things. There were some things that I saw. There was some interactions with her and my fake dad that just were very, very ugly. Um, I struggled trying to be the glue. Like, I was trying to be the glue of the family, and it was tough. I didn't know how to do that. I was trying to get my sister to not make mistakes that I had made in high school. And of course, she's a teenage woman. She's going through things, womanhood and whatnot. She didn't want to hear it. I distinctly remember one evening I was trying to tell her something, and she slammed the door in my face in our mobile home trailer, and I blew that motherfucker right off the hinges. Boom!
I was there for that one.
I knocked the whole fucking door, ripped the hinges out of the wall. Boom! Fucking door falls on my sister. Was incredible.
Yeah,
We laugh about that one now, but that was pretty touch and go there.
That was bad. There was a lot of like just turmoil going on, but to no one's fault. Like, I feel like
my mom did launch a plate at me one time.
Yeah, I also
frisbee,
Yeah.
right through the wall. Like, luckily, I've got cat-like reflexes. I don't remember why, but yeah,
She was mad at something that you had said. Like, I remember I was there for that one too. There was a lot of
shit was kind of wild.
Yeah.
And at that time we still would have dinner together though.
Yeah, that's why it was weird to me. I was like, what is happening? And whenever I go home and have like my fucked up life, I just go to my room.
I mean, plates would get launched, but that was after dinner.
Yeah.
That was after the plates had been cleaned.
He's like, are we eating out here? And we're all eating together?
Yeah.
And yeah, we would every time.
Because we're still a family unit. We're still a family unit to this day, even though we're all kind of doing our own thing. Like, my brother's a chef in Austin now. He's married. His wife is a ER nurse. He's a chef at Culinary Dropouts. My sister, she's working at Navy Federal, like as a fucking banker wizard person. 2 kids. My mom is working for a house leveling company, and she's doing her thing in Florida, loving on the grandbabies. And then I guess I can touch on a little bit. This is a super long one, man. Sorry about that. I can touch a little bit on, to round things up. Basically, I was super bitter and angry all the way up into my early 20s about not having a dad.
Yeah.
Whatever. So when Sabrina was going to school, like she said, she was in psychology and they were doing this, study or whatever about, dads, whatnot, yada yada. So she had the grand idea. I don't remember what she did. She went on like some fucking ancestry.com. It was for some project that she got an ancestry login to like delve into her past, obviously, because she's got dissertation and fucking
Oh
documents,
my
and
gosh.
she's got some pictures from World War II there.
Shut up.
But I remember one night she sat me down and she was like, "Hey, I have something I want to tell you." I'm like, "Oh fuck, what is it? Did we overdraft again?" Because at this time we were living together in like Big John's little trap house in Converse, and
Yeah.
it.
We risked our lives
Well,
in that home.
I wouldn't say that, but it's a far cry from where we are today. But
Yeah,
you gotta start somewhere, which is the whole basis of this of our entire podcast and anything we post on social media is to show you guys that no matter what your background is, you can make something of yourself.
Yeah.
Where you came from and who you used to be will, if you choose to change your mindset, will not determine who you become or where you finish at.
Yeah.
And I literally, obviously, we're telling you these things from our personal life, so obviously you can tell it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not even finished yet.
We're not
That's
even
the
finished yet.
beauty
So,
of it.
anyway, what was I saying?
Oh,
I'm
but
gonna get off track. I gotta wrap it up here.
Yeah, so we can always delve into like if y'all want to hear more of like our life story and stuff, we can always delve into like our relationship and how we moved in together and what that looked like and blah
Yeah.
blah blah. But to finish
my
family
family history, so she sat down, she told me, "Hey, look, you have two half brothers."
Well, and let me just preface this by saying I don't agree with how I went about it now. Like, as a mature woman, like, I think I was way too pushy on the subject when he clearly wasn't ready to, like, even investigate that himself. And so I kind of went around him and, like, did it for him. And then I found all this information and I was like, holy shit, I have to tell him. But so I had the best of intentions, and I think my thought process at the time was like I saw the hurt that he had for like this void in his life. And then all the turmoil with like his family and like everything that had happened up to that point. Like
Well, my papa had recently died as well.
Yeah,
Right after I got out of
yeah.
UTI, literally I graduated. I went to see my papa. Thank God that I did.
Yeah.
Like,
Unfortunately, I never even got to meet his papa.
I am so happy that right after I graduated, I went to go see him because he died in November,
Yeah.
right before Thanksgiving. Right, I graduated in October. He died the beginning of November.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the first things I did when I graduated. I wanted to go tell him and show him everything and like show him all my pictures and everything that I did and talk to him about my plans and where I thought I was going to go next. And he passed away of a heart attack in his sleep. He probably would have had it no other way. He went peacefully, taking a nap.
Yeah.
After having a sandwich and watching Bonanza. Like, that's how he would have liked to go, I believe.
Yeah, I feel like that's how anyone would like to go if they had the choice,
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, just prefacing this with the fact that
I was in a bad spot.
I don't agree with how I did it, but I know my intentions were good and I was trying to help. And Brandon, which we can get into a lot of details later, but like we had a rough time, especially in the beginning, like starting out as a new couple and like all these different like traumatic experiences that we were carrying from like our families and our childhoods and like what that looked like, and then figuring all of that out together and
Being broke.
Yeah, and being broke and not having, a financial support system like some people have when they leave the nest and they go off, and they can have like a little bit of support in the background. Families weren't able to do that, so that was just another added stress on top of everything else. But yeah, so anyway, sorry, proceed.
Yeah, anyway, so she basically said, like, hey, you have a half brother. I reached out to him on Facebook. I kind of was going to tell you back then, this was like 3 months ago, but he just now responded to me. Look, I want to show you.
And holy shit, they looked like, well, actually, the brother, I had originally reached out to Chance, which we now know. But Chance was the first brother. They're literally twins. Like Brandon and him look almost identical. It's insane, like
Yeah.
how much they look alike. And then I found out that Chance had another brother, Dakota, and so Dakota is the one that ended up reaching back out to me.
Yeah, so she had told me about that, and I didn't take it well. I was like, how dare you? Like, who the fuck do you think you are? Why would you do that? Like, in my mind, I was always thinking like, oh, okay, my real dad, biological father, left me and left my mom, and who, probably went off and started another family and like took care of them and like just outcasted us. Like, so fuck him, fuck them, fuck the new family. Like, who are they to me? Me knowing them is not going to change my life. Again, I was young, really
Yeah.
angry, still in my 20s.
Well, and I mean, it was valid feelings towards me for overstepping on my part
Yeah.
in that scenario.
I mean, still, I didn't react the way I should have. I just wasn't mature enough, to be quite honest, at that time. Like, I was doing a ton of stuff in my life at that time that was just not something a mature young man would do. And it actually wasn't until, I don't know, it was like a year, 2 years.
I don't remember the time frame, but eventually you kind of came around.
I came around. I started working on myself. I had to, because like my life was starting to break down. I was having bad like problems mentally, like my mental health was suffering. I was struggling with like suicide thoughts, just because we were having trouble in our relationship at that time. We were fucking broke. She was working 2 jobs. She was going to school. I was working my ass off. I had issues there at home with my brother, my sister, my mom. It fucking sucked seeing her like so depressed and like downbeat. My dad, he's going out to bars and doing the Jay Harley thing and like, dating again. I'm like, what a shit bag. So it was just kind of a fucking hot mess. So
Yeah, we had
ultimately, I decided, like, you know what could it hurt to reach out? I would like to know why. Why was I left behind? Why was my mom left behind? And my half brother Dakota, he's super old school. I reached out to him on Facebook, and it takes him forever to like respond. And he's like, "Sorry, bruh, He's a surfer dude.
They're from California.
And he's like, "Sorry, little dude." He doesn't really talk like that, but like that's always how he is in my mind, because he's got this like long flowing hair. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he watches my podcast or not, but if he does, just know every time like I read a text from you, it's like, totally California, dude. So finally I reached out to him. We exchanged numbers. I tried to text him because it's modern day.
And he's older, so
and he's like, "Hey, little Broseph, I don't really text." So he calls me. Long story short, gives me the scoop. He's like, "Yeah, listen, our real dad, he was kind of a shitbag to us too. Like, he had us, bailed the fuck out, shit on our mom as well."
Well, and
so
I think to like preface or to like state a little bit more on that is like idea that I get of your real dad is like everyone that we talked to about him, like everyone said how great of a person he was and like how much people loved him as a person.
Yeah.
And it was just the fact that he was
Apparently, he was just an awesome fucking dude if you wanted to be around a human being,
Yeah.
unless you were his child.
he was
just not a dad.
Well, and he struggled, I think, like with depression, which
He was
leads
big
to-
on the booze. Apparently, he loved to go
Yeah.
to bars. So, long story short, my real dad was a monster truck driver. So, if you wondered where I got my incredible talents from in driving vehicles,
But
that is where.
isn't that wild that like so come to find out his brother
My half
Dakota
Dakota owns his own body shop, custom body and paint shop in California.
Yeah, and then
Star Customs, shout out.
Yeah, and then like Brandon's real biological dad was very much into cars and like the industry and
Yeah, so I don't know what he would be. My grandfather?
yeah, technically, I guess.
Technically, my grandfather,
I
who
think.
I've never met, Cliff Starbird.
Uh-huh.
He has a monster truck museum in, I believe, Oklahoma or Kansas, maybe.
I don't know.
But yeah, so monster trucks. That's what my dad did. He drove 3 different monster trucks. And just went around the country driving monster trucks. So basically, long story short, what happened is my mom used to work at a convenience store there in Comfort. The monster fucking truck rally came to town, and he went into the convenience store, and my mom used to babysit Dakota and Chance when he was in town when they were little. And then they ended up hooking up, and then, I came about, and she, called him to tell him, and he basically wrote a letter and said, like, yeah, here's the thing. Like, I'm not really interested in being a dad. I want to just drive monster trucks and drink beer and have a good time.
Yeah.
So I wish you the best. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
And apparently, later on in life, he, became to realize, like, shit, I've made a mistake. He tried reaching out to Chance and Dakota and was like, oh my God, I would love to spend some time with you guys. Obviously, he was still struggling with alcoholism and depression. And Dakota and Chance, they're older. They're like, what are you doing coming around now? Like, we're not just going to drop our whole lives, like, to
go see
you because now you want to be a dad. And ultimately, super long story short, he couldn't handle it and he started a shotgun. So,
well, I think not directly because of that. I think he struggled with depression and addiction and ended up committing suicide.
Definitely, life got the best of him in the long run. So that's how he passed. It was not a heart attack. It was starting a shotgun. So yeah, maybe you're right about the generational trauma thing, because I definitely, I feel like honestly every man struggles with the thought of not being enough and feeling unwanted, unloved, feeling like they're not worthy, not knowing their place in life. There was a time in mine that I really, really struggled with that, and it was pretty tough for me. And I did have those thoughts, like, man, it would be so much easier if I just wasn't here. Like, but I beat those just like I beat anything else that comes my way. Ultimately, sometimes you just have shitty thoughts and you got to force them out with the good stuff. And that's pretty much, obviously there's quite a bit more to it than that, but we only got so much time.
We've been talking for almost 2 hours, but if
you guys have not made it this far. You've tuned out.
Well, or you're listening in sections, so we appreciate that. If y'all want to hear more of that, we're definitely open to sharing like our struggles as a couple and like however much Brandon's willing to share about like his struggles as overcoming like lots of suicide and things like that, and how we endured that together and how he overcame that. But yeah, it's definitely it's just wild to think about like all of that happening because like our lives are so different now and like where we came from.
Yeah.
And
Ultimately, like I say, you can overcome anything and beat anything and any odds. Just remember, like, life is a big game,
yeah.
and you just got to keep. I mean, it is and it isn't, but like, you know what I mean. You can't just get mad and flip the board over. Like, you got to keep playing. You're
Yeah.
only gonna lose so many hands before you start to win. So, like, if you're in a losing phase right now, just know that it's not permanent. Like, you're gonna get a winning hand, and then you'll start to realize how to ride that hand out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just keep playing. Don't quit the game of life. Keep playing because you're gonna end up winning if you're persistent enough and you hone up here
Yeah.
because it's all up there.
Well, and also like knowing that you're not alone and seeking resources, and
Yeah.
we did a lot of therapy, and
Yeah.
both individually and together, and just having a support system, whether that's family or a spouse or a friend or somebody that you can lean on, or whether that's like a perfect stranger that you just confide in, like whatever it is to you. But
It wasn't my favorite thing I've ever done, but it was helpful. So
yeah, and winning looks different for everyone too. Like our version of winning isn't what your version is, and I don't think it's like I don't think anyone has like the perfect recipe for a perfect life, but it's just
oh shit, our life isn't perfect now.
no, we have
But
plenty of problems. There's like plenty of healing that can be done. Like there's plenty of problems that can be solved with
yeah,
us and like our life and our marriage and our relationship and our jobs and our businesses, and like it's just you're right, you just have to keep like playing.
you'll never reach perfection. Never
Yeah.
ever at anything in life. You'll never do it perfect. You could always do something better. But the real thing is like the journey in trying to
Mhm.
chase perfection. It's not ever about being perfect. It's about the journey of you trying to be perfect. That's where growth happens. That's where you become a better person.
Yeah. I'm proud of you.
Proud of you too. Even though when we started this podcast, she was like, you know what? I'm really about to push stop right now.
Shut up.
I'm seriously going to push stop right now.
Well, I'm not mad at you anymore. I love you very much.
Oh,
And I'm
shit.
very proud of you.
He always says that when I have to tell my story. Like,
Well, because we were in
she
it,
gets all
we
pumped up about it.
because we went through it together, and like
We did.
there's a lot of well, obviously I didn't go through your childhood with you, but like all the shit that we went through together is very emotional.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy for sure. So, yeah, next time think about that before you call me a rich prick. Because
Well.
I buy some dinners for my friends.
Well, let's not go there.
Well,
Anyway, if you liked this episode, give us feedback, please. Let us know if you want us to continue talking about stuff like this, if you want us to talk more about business, whatever it is.
and if you hated it, blame Sabrina.
Yeah, if you hated this episode, please blame me because this was all my idea and Brandon didn't want to talk about any of it. So,
I'm just not big on talking about stuff like this, you know.
but that's the beauty of talking about it is
Yeah.
that people don't like talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely stuff you gotta talk about. Like, I mean, it definitely makes us relatable for sure. I feel like people have this image of us, you know, everybody always says, oh my God, they are the perfect picture of a power couple. And it's like, do you have any idea how many times we almost weren't a couple?
Yeah. Literally, like that's not a joke.
Almost over.
Yeah. There's lots of struggle.
Yeah.
I mean
it is work. Having a relationship like what we have now where we can banter back and forth like, you know, pretty haphazardly is a lot of work to get there.
well, and sometimes even after the podcast is over, he'll be mad at me for things that happen on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, last week she's like, "Yep, I'm going to be an escort." So we had to take a big poll, and she found out escorts have sexual intercourse.
No.
Every single person she's asked so far has been like, "Yep." Mm-hmm.
Not every single person. There were a couple.
Who?
Brittany Brittany told me
Okay.
not ever. I think it was Brittany said not. And Hobie would know for sure.
Well, I'll say the majority.
I'm
Yeah,
just gonna.
and even on our YouTube, some dude was like, "Hey, fool, you need to drop that chick."
Oh,
for
shut
real."
up! He did not. Who?
You look at the comment; it's on there.
I am going to check it.
Check it right now.
That's fine.
Go ahead, check it right now.
Okay, y'all are still listening, but okay. I'm gonna that. You know what?
Go ahead, check
Who
it.
was that? Because
I was some like random person. I don't know who it was, but straight up, that's what they said. Not even joking.
Comments. Get a new wife, homie.
Get a new wife, homie, is what he told me.
Oh my god, that's so mean. I was kidding, you guys. Gosh. Yeah, that's funny. But
Is it? No, I told you this last week. I guess you thought I was joking.
literally why I can like joke about stuff like this, because you know in your heart of hearts, like I would literally scream if like another man even tried to look at me. Like I just joke around. It's all in good fun.
All in good fun.
And but then even afterwards I get punished. Like all last week he was like, well, maybe you should just go be an escort then.
Yeah.
Oh.
I told her.
Sorry. I was just saying.
She was just saying. That's what she would do.
Yeah. I mean,
And I finally thought of a job that I actually am good at in this house.
Okay.
I forgot to say it.
let's see.
I change all the scent bulbs in this home.
He does, AJ, to answer your question.
Yep.
Going back to last week, he does change all of our Bath and Body Works.
And I've got like 30 in this house to go around and change. And I try to put thought into what goes into what room too to give it like energy.
No, literally. Okay, so one last comment and then we will leave. But he fucking put a scent of coffee beans in our bedroom.
Pink pepper and coffee. It was on my side. So like when I wake up in the morning, I was like,
no. I woke up the other day. I had a fucking headache. I was like, why does our room smell like coffee? Like, I do not want to smell coffee in our room. That you can put in the kitchen if you want.
I thought it was cool.
Anyway,
that would be my random weird job that I would do because I do that.
You would be a scent bulb
changer.
Okay.
Man.
Well,
all right, we got to get the fuck out of here. I got I got like 17 text messages, 42 phone calls. Kaylon's calling me 50 times during that.
I'm really hungry too.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in with us. Please like, comment, and subscribe with us on YouTube, and listen to us on Spotify and wherever else you stream podcasts. Email us for topics and conversations that you'd like to hear next at info@someonecallbs.com.